Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. We're trying to get our full screen.
Okay, there you guys are.
Oh, there. Ah!
Yeah, hey, my apologies. My internet at home is down, so I'm doing it on the phone. So it'll be a little bit more, just slightly more technically challenging, but I think we should still get a good product. And I want to welcome you guys. Hey, which one's which?
Okay. Good question. I'm Ashley. I'm Sarah.
Okay, Ashton and Sarah. And you guys are where?
Central Illinois.
What part? So what city are you guys by?
We're in Champaign, Urbana at U of I right now for school.
Oh, okay, yeah, I lived kind of in the Chicago area for a long time when I grew up, so I'm kind of familiar with that.
Oh, where in the Chicago area?
Well, Chicago Heights, South Chicago.
No way. We grew
Yeah.
up home of Flossmoor.
Home Fly. Yeah, I know. I used to live in
Yeah.
there's a place called Country Club Hills I used to live in too. It's right near Homewood Flossmoor.
Yeah.
My mom used to play tennis at the Homewood Flossmoor Tennis Club when I was a kid. I remember that. So,
That's so funny. A small world.
how are you guys doing, by the way? Are you guys staying safe from the crazy virus land? Is it going crazy over there like it is everywhere
I
else?
feel like we haven't got hit with it yet. We just got back from the gym, and the gym was pretty empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that many cases by us yet, even though there's like no testing, so who knows, but
Yeah, there's probably a lot of cases that no one's just, not as many people have gotten clinically sick with it yet. But hey, do me a favor. I want to make a comment because you guys go by the Strong Sisters, and I thought that was a cute name. I thought it was a play on your last name because Armstrong. Then I saw one of you guys in there pulling 345 for a triple. I think it was Ashley, wasn't it?
yeah, we've been doing powerlifting for quite a few years.
Yeah.
Sarah used to be super, super strong too, but then she did a bikini competition last year, and her
Okay.
focus kind of shifted from strength to more like bodybuilding. So I'd
Yeah,
say
sure.
we now kind of do like a power building approach.
Yeah, you guys are actually pretty darn strong. I was pretty impressed. That raised your level of credibility with me personally.
Good. Appreciate that. But it is a play on our last name. Yeah. Just to clarify, we're not like.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. That I didn't. I kind of followed a little bit of the stuff you guys have been doing. So, what this is kind of what we do. We just have people come in and then we kind of chat and then let people ask questions. And I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to read the questions right now. Okay, I see the chat there. I can see the chat. So we've got some people. Bro was commenting on his gym as being mostly empty. So I'm just going to go back forward and ask questions. So can you just give us a little bit of your background for those people that may not, know your story, and maybe to fill me in a little bit because I know you guys. Well, we'll talk some more. Go ahead, tell us a little bit of your background.
All right, so we'll give a brief background and kind of how we got into carnivore. So we've really been into health and wellness for quite a few years. And obviously that definition of health has evolved throughout this process. So we've been working hard in the gym for probably 8 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But flashback about 5 years ago, we were definitely following more of like a, if it fits your macros, IIFYM, carb heavy, low fat diet. But we weren't using processed foods. We were definitely like the real food approach and just kind of staying higher carb, lower fat, plant-based. Yeah. So we were doing that for quite a few years. And then symptoms just started to develop over time. A few of the things that I was dealing with were chronic constipation, insomnia, panic attacks, Raynaud's, and that's pretty much a summary of my symptoms. So it was like that, and then for me, I had a lot of issues arise on my skin. So I would get rashes, like the butterfly rash with lupus, no circulation in my hands and my feet, unnecessarily joint pain at like my age. I was still a teen. And so that led us to go to the doctor to get checked out. And at that point, I had blood work come back with elevated AMA levels, which, just kind of indicates there's some sort of autoimmune condition going on there. And so I was referred to a rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist, again, did some more blood work, and then it ended up prescribing me just a bunch of medications to mask my symptoms and said, hey, you're going to have a full-blown out autoimmune disease. It's looking like lupus. Just take these medications and we'll monitor you as we go. And luckily, our mom has always been into more naturopathic, holistic health. So she said, no, you're not doing that. So that led us down this whole journey of trying out like fasting, which eventually led us to keto. And then things weren't 100% better on keto, even though we were feeling better. And then that's what led us to carnivore. And that's how we're here. And we feel so much better that we're so passionate about sharing all this with other people, especially young girls in our generation who are going so plant-based, and they don't see, they accept like the bloat, the constipation, the pimples, the brain fog. They accept that as normal.
And it's really not. And so that's like our mission, is just really get people to open their eyes and realize that there is a better life out there, and it involves eating a lot more meat.
Hey, Ashley, just for people that don't know, because you use a word called Raynaud's, and there's Raynaud's disease, Raynaud's phenomenon, and you know that. Can you tell people what Raynaud's is, because they probably, some of the people may not know what that is.
Basically, what we experienced was, it would be warm outside, and we would lose circulation in our fingers. For me, it was more fingers. Hers were toes.
Me, toes.
So your hands or feet get really cold, and they turn purplish, bluish, and it's almost like they're gonna fall off.
So lack of blood flow.
And it has nothing to do with the temperature outside. You're not even in the cold environment. It's just like your body is not, something's going wrong there.
And that's a pretty common symptom of autoimmune diseases.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get this kind of spasticity of arterioles and small vessels, and that leads to that sort of thing. So you guys basically have diagnoses of autoimmune type symptoms and the clinical manifestations, and the malar rash or the butterfly rash that you get in the cheeks with lupus. And so then you make it through this transition to different diets. How did you respond when you went on a carnivore diet? How did that progress for you guys?
Okay, so this is kind of funny. So I was very much plant-based keto, and then I made like a drastic jump straight into carnivore. And the biggest reason I made that jump is because I still had chronic constipation when I was keto. And unfortunately, for the first 21 days on the carnivore diet, I did not poop. So I had even worse constipation, and I was really questioning, like, why the heck am I still doing this? But I am so happy that I stuck through it, because now my digestion is regulated after 12 years of chronic constipation. And so I think it just goes to show that everyone has a different experience, and it's going to take some time to shift, because it's such a drastic change in the diet. I had chronic constipation. She had a completely different experience.
I had the typical like diarrhea situation going on. So it's interesting to see that, because we did follow the same exact diet for so many years, and we actually got our gut microbiomes tested, and it showed the same populations of healthy and same populations of bad bacteria.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see how we responded differently.
But that was the only really negative symptom that I was feeling. And the biggest reasons why I was sticking with it was because of my like improved focus, mental clarity, energy. And so that's really what made me stick with it. And I'm so happy that we did.
Yeah. Now you guys, you know, recently we're in the media. You were on that show. You had like an article written on you. Maybe it was from the UK, one of the magazines. You know, like, and they tend to misrepresent things. I've noticed that whenever I've been interviewed by like these UK magazines, they just kind of, they take like 5% of what you say and they run with that. And you guys were portrayed in a way that I think probably doesn't represent what's truly going on. So just explain to us, what does a typical day or week of food look like for you guys? I mean, from what I gather, you guys eat nothing but raw brains, and that's pretty much the way it's portrayed in the media, you know, kind of. So I know that's not the case. So what does your diet look like day to day now, currently?
Okay.
Yes. So we pretty simple during the week, and then we like to choose one day of the week to kind of get fancy and do more of like a fun nose to tail day. Just give a typical day.
Yeah, so we eat 2 meals a day. We typically eat around like noon or so when we're hungry. It just works in our schedule that way, and then we eat again around 5
4 or 5.
And honestly, we eat the convenient cuts, the cost-efficient ones. So we eat a lot of chuck roast. We eat a lot of suet for extra fat. We eat eggs. That's like our standard staples.
Liver and bone broth. So I'd say that's like a typical day. Is some sort of muscle meat, typically chuck or round, suet, eggs, and bone broth. That's like a non-fancy, I'm busy today, don't want to spend time on food.
Yes, but when we do get creative with it, we have tried pretty much every single potential organ meat you could.
Or offcuts.
And we honestly enjoy them. I know a lot of people have a hard time with a lot of different parts, like we said, raw brain, but I don't know what it is. We're not fazed by it, so we include it sometimes for the variety of like different textures, tastes. It's fun to put in recipes.
Yeah.
We're self-proclaimed foodies, so of course when we were vegan, we were experimenting with every single vegetable possible and all that jazz. And really all we've done is just shift that to an animal-based obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, what you see is there's a lot of ways you can cook meat. I mean, there's literally thousands of different recipes out there. Do you guys use spices and seasoning much? You know, do you guys tolerate those?
Yeah, so when we first started Carnivore, we stuck with salt only for a while. And then we like to use leaf spices. Those are typically the more benign spices. So things like bay leaves, oregano, thyme, rosemary. We tolerate those totally fine.
What do we think? I mean,
Yeah.
we've never done like I'm going to have rosemary one day and then see how I like respond. It's just, we don't get our autoimmune symptoms. And I think that's what we care about the most.
Yeah.
We did food sensitivity tests back before we were carnivore, and I'm not sure how accurate they are now considering the just complete shift in our microbiomes. So of course those sensitivity tests showed I was sensitive to garlic or pepper and all these other things. I don't know, and I don't miss those things, so
No.
I haven't tested it out necessarily.
So we use salt and leaf spices, and stevia is included in those leaf spices. Stevia doesn't bother us, and that's in a lot of like the pre-workout and those type of supplements that we take too.
Yeah.
Have you guys, I know you said you had ANA or anti-nuclear antibodies, Sarah. Have you retested that? Have there been any changes in those things, or is it just symptomatic that you've noticed improvements in?
So I got blood work done at the end of last summer after 5 months on Carnivore, and my ANA levels were completely negative. So I completely reversed, and it was shown with blood work. Sarah's dropped a few levels.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact, you know, it's like 1 to something. I was like the highest 2,560. I don't remember what the exact number is. And then now I'm at the, like, if you're under 1 to 80, you're no longer testing positive. I'm at 1 to 160. And I would consider that a pretty significant drop. But I've chosen not to care that it's still there. And instead I just go based on my symptoms. Otherwise I'm going to unnecessarily stress out about it. So all of my symptoms are gone.
Yeah.
And like, there's not much more I can say how powerful Carnivore has been for me other than saying that.
Yeah, I mean, that at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for is that
Right.
sort of thing.
I do think it's pretty cool that her blood work demonstrated the lower inflammation and like almost the complete healing. I think that's pretty powerful because when you're given the diagnosis of having an autoimmune disease, you're told it's chronic.
Yeah.
So it is cool to see it be reversed and not accept that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a super important thing to say that, you know, it's just because we haven't found a good medicine for, you know, a pharmaceutical that can fix something doesn't mean it's beyond hope for a lot of people. And, you know, you guys and other people are showing that every single day, which is really awesome. It's one of the things, you know, as you guys know, I've been pushing this message out for several years now and, you know, just showing success story after success story. And so after a while, people say, wait a minute, there's something going on now. So, hey, let's talk a little bit, because I know people want to hear about this stuff, because you guys were on the show, The Doctors, with Paul, and, you know, obviously what made it on TV look very one-sided and very much, you know, just ridiculous. I mean, quite honestly, I thought it was just ridiculous. But tell us a little bit of the backstory on that, and then, you know, kind of what actually happened. I heard some funny stuff that was going on, like crazy kind of stuff even beyond what we saw on camera.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's a few things.
So last fall, we received an email from a small British media company saying, hey, can we run a story about you guys? Can you answer these questions for us? So we responded with answers to the questions and said, sure. Turns out they sold that message, that email and that article to the Daily Mail, and that's the article that you were talking about. The Daily Mail then took this story and just like phrased us as like raw vampires. Raw was used everywhere possible. So every single photo that they pulled from our Instagram, raw. And so it kind of portrayed us as crazy, troubled girls, but it spiked the interest of someone that worked for the Doctors TV show. And so a few weeks after that article came out, we received an email saying, hey, would you guys like to be on the Doctors TV show? And we asked if Dr. Paul Saladino could come on with us. And that's kind of where it came from. We weren't given much information about what was going to be on the show itself, but it was very clear from the start that they were just there to portray us and depict us as just troubled teenage girls with like restrictions.
I think that's like the favorite thing that media likes to do. They take the fact that carnivore could be considered restrictive, and then they like to tie it to an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And so we openly have talked about our eating disorders in the past, which we dealt with many years ago.
More than 10 years ago.
More than 10 years ago. And they were aware of that. And of course, that was one of the questions that they brought up, just because like they're trying to plant that into other people's brains. Like, oh, these girls, you know, they're troubled. They've got some mental disorders going on. That's why they're following this diet.
So
and I just think that's ridiculous.
Rather than focusing on any of the benefits that we've seen, they focused on the questions that they started with were, you girls had an eating disorder, didn't you? Isn't the carnivore diet expensive? So like just picking these silly questions rather than focusing on any of the benefits that we have experienced.
So like about the eating disorder question, I had briefed them because they had to ask me first, like, did you have an eating disorder? I said, yes, having dealt with it in many years. I briefed them on how my mental health has improved significantly going on carnivore. I have no issues with food. There's complete food freedom, no body image issues because I feel like I'm in control of my health. And they didn't bring any of that up. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages that I want to spread to females, especially males too. There is so much mental freedom that comes with this diet. And of course that didn't get brought up. So I was a little upset there because that is so important to me. And so, yes, other crazy things that happened. Like she said, half the show we were muted.
Yeah.
So we could see what was going on, but because we had Skyped in, they could mute us. And so they were asking Paul questions and we were trying to pitch in and like say our experience, but they just ignored us. Like we were literally like in the background like this. And then another funny crazy thing that happened is apparently after the show, the blonde haired woman, I don't remember her name, she apparently in the parking lot literally had a
yelling fest at Paul.
A bitch fest and screamed at him saying how ridiculous carnivore is, irresponsible, all this stuff. These, again, treating us like we had no voice for ourselves, saying like, those girls don't know what's coming to them because of you. And so it just shows how insane people
and how one-sided the show. One specific example was during the show, I don't even know if they aired this part. I don't think they did. The blonde-haired woman said, you know, the girls are probably just feeling so much better because they've been eating in a caloric deficit and they've lost weight. False. I have gained 12 pounds since starting carnivore. And I tried to say that in the background and we were muted. So it's just, it was silly.
Yeah, I've seen that on many occasions. I think I can't remember her name now, the doctor, the blonde-haired doctor, but I believe she's part of PCRM. I'm not sure. I think she has a plant-based affiliation, you know, at least in some degree. So, I mean, obviously there's a little bit of bias there. And then that is the case, you know, I've pointed this out for ages. I mean, we've seen this, you know, I had Gary Fetke on yesterday, orthopedic surgeon. We both saw patients that get better without losing any weight. I mean, knee pain, joint pain goes away. They don't lose a pound. And I've seen people that you know, have, and I consult with people that have, you know, issues with anorexia and recovering, and they're gaining weight, and they have, you know, rheumatoid arthritis. They're gaining weight, they're putting on muscle, they're getting stronger. They're eating in a caloric surplus and they're getting better. So it's not all, I mean, for many people, because so many people are obese, I mean, that's the problem. We got, you know, the majority of people have weight to lose, body fat to lose, and they feel better. But you also have another set of population that's, you know, not overweight, and they get better too, which I think is interesting. And I think it kind of sort of throws a little monkey wrench in that theory. It's all about a caloric deficit. So interesting. Let me ask you guys about protein. You know, there's a lot of back and forth. You guys are obviously interested in staying strong, maintaining and putting on muscle mass, which I think is important, particularly for all people, including women. What is your protein intake like? I mean, just without percentage-wise, but I mean, are you targeting a certain amount of protein daily? I mean, I know it's fairly intuitive, but I mean, are you like, I need this protein to function?
Yeah, actually, let me calculate a quick ratio. So,
well, because we've always been into like powerlifting and bodybuilding, we've always done a higher protein approach. We didn't change that coming to carnivore or keto. We are definitely advocates for at least your body weight per gram in protein.
Yeah. And okay, 1 to 1, right? Yeah.
We are actually above that.
We sit above that.
Yeah.
In preference at a certain point, maybe we would see inflammation reduction if we lowered it a little bit, but we don't see too many negatives of eating higher protein.
So,
I would say,
well, okay. So when we were like bulking for the past like 10 to 11 months, we were sitting at about 1.3 grams of protein above our, like, times our body weight. And that was a super comfortable amount. Recovery from the gym was great. We were able to put on a lot of muscle gains. But when we switched to a cut a few weeks ago, we experimented with like even higher than that. And I did see some negative effects. I had increased like indigestion and a little bit more bloating, and it affected my sleep a little bit. So I'm not a proponent of low protein at all, but I tried to go like super high, like really push the boundaries of protein, and I saw some slight negative effects. But I mean, sitting around like 1.3 times your body weight, people would think that that is super high, but that's kind of the approach that we take.
Yeah, but we also prioritize fats. We're eating higher percent fat. We were about 75% fat in their diet. So it was just a high calorie load.
Exactly. If you're trying to gain weight and you're kicking butt in the gym, you need a lot of calories. And so that's what it kind of broke down to. We were eating high calories, not skimping on the protein, not skimping on the fat.
Yeah. But it's interesting. We always say that now we're eating a lot of muscle meat. In the past, our protein was being like accumulated from residual proteins from like peanut butter and broccoli, even, because at a certain point it has some protein. So I would argue we're now eating the most bioavailable protein possible in the best amount for us, and that's why we've been able to put on a good amount of muscle, whereas we've been trying to put on muscle for so many years, and it just seems unnecessarily difficult. And so it's been a pretty cool shift to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I mean, I don't think anybody that actually understands protein outside of plant-based advocates realize it. You know, the protein coming from animal sources is not only in a better ratio, but it's more bioavailable. And the recent study just was published 3-4 months ago confirming that. You know, when they sort of controlled for leucine and controlled for essential amino acid content of plant-based versus animal-based, protein sources, we even still saw better. Even though the inputs were exactly the same, we saw better bioavailable amino acids in the serum. After a meal, I think something like 40%. So, even if you could get it in the ratios in plants, it's still harder to absorb. So that clearly makes sense. And what you speak about is being in a caloric surplus. I mean, again, that most of the literature supports that. I mean, it's if you're going to put on muscle, you need a caloric surplus, and if you're not eating carbs, you got to get it from fat. And so, you guys, I mean, obviously there's fat in meat. And you said you use some suet, which is, obviously additional fat. Are you guys doing any dairy at all? Is dairy something that's off the menu for you guys?
So it's something that we incorporate from time to time, but we're also huge proponents of raw dairy and finding like local farmers that source raw dairy, because it turns out there's a lot more health benefits of raw dairy as opposed to chemically altered, pasteurized, and homogenized dairy. So we'll have that from time to time, but it's not like a main source of food for us.
I would rather eat more meat.
Yeah.
I feel much more satisfied after eating. I'm not as satisfied with dairy. I don't think we have any inflammation problems with dairy.
When we source it properly.
Yeah. And so it's not like a focus, but we're not like, quote, afraid of it either.
Yeah, we're not going to avoid it.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody had said about what was, you kind of mentioned, I guess, a little bit about your background. Was your diet as a kid anything special? I mean, what do you think set you up for, eating disorder, behavior, crazy diets when you're like teenager? I mean, were you guys, what was that?
You were very slow motion.
Oh, I think it cut off. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, somebody was just asking about your childhood diet growing up, and do you think any of the things might have impacted your development of sort of disordered eating?
Absolutely. So I suffered from orthorexia growing up in high school, where I only wanted to eat healthy foods, and I was eating a very low fat. So I was doing the typical I'm only going to eat whole grains, so I only want whole grain bread. I only want whole grain pasta. I'm only going to eat sweet potatoes, not white potatoes. I'm going to avoid red meat and just stick with my chicken and my egg whites. So it's very much like the bodybuilder bro, like rice, broccoli, chicken, eggs. And I think having that during my development period and kind of in my late teens, early 20s with that low fat intake really did not set me up for success at all. Following the standard traditional nutritional guidelines just did not work for me, clearly.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of influenced her, because I'm actually 4 years older, even though I look younger than Sarah.
What is that? So she's older than me, but so she had a lot of influence on my eating habits growing up too, and I actually ended up having anorexia, which led to bulimia. I did go see I'm 23 now. This was when I was 14, right? I did go see a nutritionist, and I actually, now on the other side of those disorders, I have a completely different mindset on it all. And I actually think that as a society, we need to shift our mindset on eating disorders, because if you take orthorexia, for example, an obsession or fear of eating processed foods, basically, why should we be eating these processed foods anyway? I have a really hard time digesting that now. And especially looking back on my nutritionist, she was telling me, okay, this week I want you to eat pizza. And this next week I want
Face
you
your
to
fears.
I want you to eat pasta. And so the way I see it now is I was developing these aversions to these food items because I was having very bad digestion at the time, and they would bloat me. I would feel like crap. So of course I'm not going to want to eat those items, yet I was being told to by, the institution. And so on the other side of it now, I strongly disagree with the approach that most people take to handling eating disorders, as like, oh, just add more carbs in. You have to eat the foods that you're afraid of. I just think that that's setting people up for failure. Because when I did that for X amount of years, and all I saw was insulin resistance. I saw my body fighting me each step of the way that I would add in a new fear food. And so of course I'm starting to fear foods more because my body is hating it.
It's just a bad cycle.
So that is why I have so much food freedom now, because I'm no longer afraid of these things. And I educated myself, which I feel like we have to do, because the people who are educating us on nutrition right now obviously are biased. And so I just ranted, but
no, that was good.
That's just how I feel about the whole eating disorder thing. So, but of course that impacted how we ate growing up.
And so that probably led to our development of autoimmune symptoms in our early 20s.
Absolutely.
But I would argue that most people our age are dealing with these symptoms and just blindly accepting them as this is part of the aging process. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah. Even just something like bloat.
Yeah. No, we shouldn't be bloating.
At least all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I've made that argument a lot of times that if your digestion hurts and either the food's wrong or your digestive system is wrong, either way, you got to fix it. And so let me ask you guys, because some people asked, one of the questions was, since that little doctor's episode, have you guys been approached for more media, or what's been going on since that time? Is there any other stuff that people try to get you to do?
Honestly, I think that show actually had a good response. It's just from this community.
Yeah, we received a lot of support from the community.
And we're talking to you right now, right? So we're connecting more to people who are eating a carnivore diet, and they heard what we had to say. We got a lot of messages from people saying, I would have never considered carnivore, but I saw how much they were fighting it on TV that I had to look into it. And I think that that's really cool to see. Yeah. We haven't been approached by anybody else, but
to be honest, we've been, a few people have been trying to get us onto Joe Rogan so that we can actually tell our story, but he hasn't taken the bait yet.
We'll get there.
But I think, honestly, coming off of that doctor's experience, it just motivated us even more to actually share our story, because we didn't have the opportunity to do so on the show itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody was let me just go back to the question. Sorry, I just got to switch screens to get to the questions. But there was somebody said you guys were doing a little bit of a carb experiment, I guess maybe using honey. I didn't see that. Can you talk a little bit about that, honey or fruit or anything else you've tried to incorporate? I mean, again, we're not dogmatic about our approach. We're trying to figure out what works best for our own bodies. And so what have you guys played with, and what have you found the results to be?
Yeah, so to be honest, years of doing powerlifting and bodybuilding, you're almost convinced you need carbs to build muscle. So when we started Carnivore last summer, last spring, we experimented a little bit with what we call targeted carnivore diet, TCD experiments, where we would have a little bit of carbs as pre-workout or intra-workout or post-workout. And we're honestly just experimenting, because why not? So we were doing the most benign sources that we could. So things like white rice, honey, squash, some local fruit. But now fast forward to where we are now, and we haven't been using carbs at all the last few months, largely because we're in the middle of Illinois and there's no local produce. I think something about eating seasonally is super powerful, and I think we'll definitely experiment with that in the future if we're able to grow our own vegetables in the summer. I'm going to eat my own vegetables that I took care of, and yeah. So that was our experience last summer. It may have helped a little bit with gym performance, but
the only reason we were doing it is potentially to see an improvement in gym performance.
yeah,
We had different reactions. So for me, I actually felt bloated in the gym, therefore I couldn't push myself as much when I would have carbs pre-workout. And she felt some sort of different ways. But
yeah.
we haven't been having them because we didn't really see a benefit.
I would say that on some days I do feel a slight energy boost in the gym when I incorporate them as intra-workout carbs and something that's like digested super quickly. And the only reason that I can like suspect on this is, so there's equal muscle glycogen, the Volex study between fat adapted and carb-based athletes. My thought in, if you are in the gym for like a longer period of time and really working hard, those muscle glycogen levels may get depleted a little bit. And so the small amount of intra-workout carbs can just tap off those stores and provide like instant energy. That's just one thought. But whether or not you need that really depends on your goals. And if you are someone that doesn't need it, that's totally fine. And if you are someone that does need it, experiment to what works for you.
Yeah, and I wonder, you know, because when I was doing ketogenic diets years ago, I was doing targeted ketogenic, cyclic ketogenic, you know, carb diet, all the carb backloading, all the different varieties. And for me, you know, as somebody who's in my now 50s, you notice when you get inflammation pretty quickly because your joints and stuff hurt, and you just don't feel like training. And I would get the GI symptoms as well, particularly on the days where I was using a lot of carbohydrates with the carb, you know, sort of carb cycling type routine. And so I'm just wondering, you know, like honey versus rice. I mean, rice has got some fiber, it's got more bulk. I would suspect it might have more potential, and other vegetables more potentials to bloat versus a real like concentrated, just tiny amount of things like glucose or dextrose or honey. And if you guys notice a difference on your GI symptoms, because obviously if you're bloated, you feel like squatting, right? I mean, this doesn't go well.
Yeah. And honey is a 50-50 split of glucose and what's the other carb source?
Fructose. Fructose.
Fructose. And I saw improved energy relative between honey and like things like squash and rice.
Well, I think it's important to note, like, she's literally talking about 15 to 20 grams of carbs total.
Max.
So it's not like back in the old days where we were eating like 400 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
It's so, especially when you're so fat adapted, even something as small as that can make a difference.
Yeah, you're looking at a minimum effective dose is what you're trying to find, a minimum effective dose to affect you without the side effects. And, you know, the good thing for you guys is you have these, not good thing, but you have these autoimmune conditions that you'll know very quickly. They'll flare back up potentially if you go the wrong way. That's you know, I think that's important. What was the other question I wanted to ask you guys? Let's see if someone else has something in here. Oh yeah, how somebody asked about the transition between bodybuilding or physique from powerlifting. What was the transition like? What was it? You know, did you have any major shifts in any difficulties to make that transition? I suppose.
Going from powerlifting to bodybuilding?
Right. Yeah. What kind of numbers you guys hitting as powerlifters, by the way, just out of curiosity?
We both hit 400 pounds for deadlifts.
Nice.
My squat is not pretty and is not good. I hit like 245 when I was a little bit heavier, and then my bench maybe max 140. So I'm only good at deadlifting. She hit like 175 for bench back in the day,
and then
280,
295 for squat.
Okay,
so that was my highest in the 400 deadlift, but that was in our like, we accepted being bloated and the joint pains. That was back in the YOLO, if it fits your macros days.
Eat big to lift big.
Yeah. And so anyway, so are we referring to the transition from powerlifting to bodybuilding?
Yeah.
We're talking about?
Yeah. I think somebody's asking about what was the decision on the bodybuilding type stuff or the physique. I know you're not doing, obviously you're not doing active bodybuilding, or you'd be, you know, I mean, you guys look great, but I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? Bodybuilding gals are obviously, they're a bit more androgenic, if you get my drift. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just did a bikini competition, and honestly, like we said, we've been into fitness for so long. It was one of those goals that I've always had, and I never would have allowed myself to do it until I like loved my body as is at every stage. And I finally found that coming to keto and carnivore. So I felt like it was the time that I could do it. Throughout my bikini prep, my carbs, so this was my transition to carnivore from keto. It was during my prep, so my carbs kept getting cut anyway. So I was at like 30 grams of carbs, 20 grams of carbs, 15, 10. So I had a very slow transition. And it's really funny because even though I was only eating 10 grams of carbs worth of bok choy at a certain point towards the end of my prep, the day after my competition, I went full carnivore and I just eliminated that. And that same week, I lost literally 5 pounds of inflammation.
She looked so much better the week after than she was on stage.
It was like the biggest fail ever. But it was really cool to see because I finally was like, oh wow, okay, my body actually hates these vegetables. Clearly I was, even my face is completely different from eating vegetables to not. And so I thought that was awesome because I got to see exactly what was going on.
But her training significantly shifted. She went from a more of like the strength focus to more of like the muscle mind connection, hypertrophy, different rep ranges. And this was, just to give context, this was January of last year when you started the prep, and then you had the show in June.
Yeah.
And I made it hard on her by switching to carnivore while she was prepping.
Very jealous. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that, when we talk about traditional cutting for physique contests is most people are coming from a high carb background. And so they're used to a lot of glucose running around. They're fueling themselves with glucose. And as you inevitably, you cut energy, you cut both fat and glucose, you cut, pretty much pretty much an exclusive protein diet with maybe some fiber for fullness. But I mean, that's a traditional bodybuilding cut. And so what happens is these people are so used to running glucose, then there's no glucose left and they're not particularly well fat adapted and they feel miserable. But I think people that are coming from a fat adapted standpoint, when they cut fat, because they do that, you have to do the same thing. You go low energy, high protein, but because you have, you've got intracellular fat, lipid droplets you can draw from, you've got still body fat, you've got such a higher source of energy that you can draw from that it becomes a much more comfortable transition. And that's what I've heard from a lot of people who have done it this way.
I agree entirely. So everything I was told doing a bodybuilding prep was that I was going to have just extreme hormonal issues, my energy, I was going to be hangry, mental fatigue and fog because of the low calorie diet, which is expected. But like you just said, I honestly didn't experience those things. I thought it was really cool because I had grown, I would always idolize people who had done these competitions, but then I saw their real life situation and they were, if I meet them in person, they were pissed off,
not happy.
They didn't want to be in the gym. They were struggling. They had brain fog and fatigue. Their entire rest of their lives were put on hold just for this goal. And I just didn't experience that. I actually felt better. I started to feel better as the carbs would be reduced. And I was very fat adapted. My fat never got that low. So I agree with you. I think there's a experience, and I think it's a healthier route to take for these competitions.
Absolutely.
Personally.
Yeah. What is your, so when you guys are cutting or I don't know, Sarah, if you both are doing it, but what is your, like you said, you're 70% fat at maintenance, which is probably a pretty normal place for most people, 30% protein and, whatever, tiny amount of carbohydrate. What does it look like? How low do you get with fat? How high do you get in protein when you get to these, or have you done those experiments yet?
We're in the middle of the experiment.
Yeah, we are. We're experimenting right now. We're shifting down, so definitely kind of closer to the 60-40 percentage. But I think we're definitely going to be experimenting with fat cycling. So keeping the higher protein days throughout the week and then having maybe 1, 2, or 3 refeeds in a day where we go 70, 75, 80% fat. And I think that's just going to help with the hangry symptoms if we get any, and possibly any hormonal issues. And we're learning about that from Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, where he takes the fat cycling approach when he's prepping for his bodybuilding show. So we'll be sharing it, but that's our approach right now.
Yeah, I've talked about that for quite a while now. I had another bodybuilder, Joe Binley, who'd done that and achieved success. And he's actually worked with Olympia level athletes and doing similar type situations. And so basically it's, you kind of, when you're really fat, and I mean really fat, is relative. But when you're starting out, you can go relatively longer periods lean, and then you throw that that fat refeed in there, once 5-6 days in or something like that. And as you get progressively leaner and leaner and leaner, those fat refeeds have to come a little more frequently because obviously your energy supply is dwindling, and you kind of just balance that as you kind of dial back calories a little bit. So it's interesting to see that. And Yeah, it seems to be a pretty effective way to do it. You mentioned some pre-workouts and supplements. What kind of stuff are you guys utilizing? What do you find to be beneficial? What do you find to be a waste of time?
Yeah, we used to be really into supplements, thinking we needed them. We take some pre-workout sometimes. It's just a really basic. It's got caffeine, beta-alanine, and it's only sweetened with stevia. We could easily get away with one that has no sweetener, but
it's the Honey Badger brand, and we buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
We have no negative symptoms to it, and I would say that caffeine is kind of one of those pre-workout supplements that actually is beneficial, and so we definitely use that frequently. But other than that,
glycine. We take glycine.
We take glycine at night.
Pure glycine powder.
And
that's the only
salt.
Oh, salt. I want to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys were you guys coffee drinkers prior to? I mean,
yes.
Something that, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and no longer any coffee. Coffee, turns out I was one of the really slow digesters of coffee beans, and it was one of the huge issues with my digestion, I would say, and it would also affect my sleep a lot. And it's crazy now that I do not rely on coffee at all.
Yeah.
And so you got, I assume it's just caffeine tablets then. You guys are taking caffeine tablets or a supplement with a caffeine in it, basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pre-workout supplement that has I think 150 milligrams of caffeine in a scoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 200 is a pretty typical dose. I took caffeine tablets for a little while to see, and honestly, I ended up giving them up a couple of years ago, and I didn't see a big difference. But it's interesting to see how things change with that. What are you guys? I guess you guys live together and stuff, or you guys kind of you guys spend a lot of time. It just looks like you do similar things. So.
Yeah, so Sarah went to undergrad at University of Illinois, and then I started graduate school at University of Illinois when she was still in undergrad. And since I was going to be here for 5 to 6 years, I figured we might as well move into a house. And so moved in together 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. However many years I've been in grad school, 5 years now. And she's kind of waiting on me to finish up my PhD and then moving on to the next stage, which will be fun.
What are you getting your PhD in?
Mechanical engineering.
Okay, so you're not just a crazy wacko, right? I mean, it's kind of funny. You've got to educate. I just laugh at people that are educated. Yeah, mechanical engineering stuff. I had my college roommate when I was studying biology. I remember I would go out on Saturday morning. He'd be sitting there on with his drafting board, drawing up, schematics, and I'd come back at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. He'd still be there, sitting there. That was a tough career field for sure. Yeah.
They definitely try to just weed you out by just pounding down a ton of work, but
she just sits at her robot.
Yeah.
And does things that I'll never understand. But yeah, so we've been on our entire health journey together, and it's cool how we've had very similar responses to every single diet we've done. I think that's one of the it's allowed us to learn a lot about ourselves, and
we are really fortunate to live with someone who is going through the carnivore diet and accepts the carnivore diet. I can't imagine being on your own and having people question what you're doing at all points. So I think it really helps to have that support.
That's been one of our goals, is to create that community for everybody who engages with us, because we recognize a lot of people are doing it by themselves.
Yeah.
They don't have support from their families. They don't have a friend to do it with every single day. And because it's, like you said, you're not a crazy wacko, we're viewed as crazy wackos from everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's one of our goals, is just create that community within Carnivore, is hey, you're not alone. We're with you.
Yeah, and as you probably realize, what we're doing here at MeetRx is very similar. I mean, we've got thousands of members now, and we every day we have online support meetings. And there's meetings literally all day long, so it's really nice to sort of video format chat. I know I've seen a few of you guys' videos. You guys are doing pretty good on the video stuff. My stuff is still kind of baby level because I'm just not very good at production, but But you guys are definitely making a difference, so that's really fun. Are you getting, what has been the feedback? Are you getting much of the sort of negativities? I mean, I get that too, and I mean, I tend to, honestly, it's about 2% of what I get. I mean, 98% of what I get is support, but I would imagine somebody. Are you getting sort of mostly support and very little hatred, or what's the story with you guys?
I think it fluctuates based on the topic we're talking about.
So the other day we reviewed a dietitian's YouTube video response about the carnivore diet, and that was definitely a little spicy, kind of ruffling some feathers.
Oh my God.
And so we received some negative feedback from a few of those people,
from people who are unwilling to change their viewpoints on things.
Yeah.
And by the way, the whole dietitian thing is a whole nother topic, because it's just insane what, like, the background of where they're taught and why they're being taught that, and all the
deep-rooted bias.
Yeah. The most hate we get is honestly from vegans.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in like a segmenting way. It's just, I feel like they see us who came from a more plant-based diet, and then they like to claim that we were bought out. I don't know who, if somebody wants to pay me, sure.
Yeah.
But like, I don't really understand where that's coming from.
And the biggest thing that we get is, are you guys going to eat your dogs next?
Yeah, we get called cannibals.
Yeah.
On a frequent basis.
But we have really committed to not letting any of this bother us. We like to say we left that bish sadness back in 2019.
Yeah.
And it doesn't phase us anymore.
No.
I would say it's somewhere similar to 2% negative.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say. And it probably represents the population, because I think what's that, 1 to 2% of the population is kind of vegan right now, and and it seems like they're all online being trolls, but but I mean, I think the people that were most caring about it, people in the middle that they were kind of confused as to where to go. So, what has been the I guess, have you guys noticed any negative so far? I mean, anything you found that's negative with the diet so far?
Honestly, no.
We've had this question before, and we've been thinking about it and still don't have an answer.
Okay, so like the one thing that somebody would argue is, oh, it's super restrictive. Don't you miss like eating carbs or something? And no, our taste preferences have adjusted so much, and like that food freedom that comes, like no more food addiction. That's huge. And
for people who do think that it's restrictive, one of our goals is to post like recipe videos or post recipes to show that if you take more of like a nose to tail approach.
I mean, even if you don't, like you said, there's so many ways to cook meat. You don't even have to cook the meat. That's another way to eat it. Like,
yeah, but if you take, like, you can get creative with it, and you can create this wide textured profile that you may miss. So some people may miss like a spongy, bready texture. You can create that with carnivores, and just kind of show that it's not restrictive.
Yeah. But so literally nothing negative has happened to us. I know everybody might have a different experience. That is why we're so passionate about sharing, is because for the first time in our lives, we feel so good,
so aligned,
that we have to share about it, if that makes sense.
No, of course, yeah, it does. I mean, it's hard to not, when you come from a position of illness or despair, and then you find hope, and you find something that really objectively works for you, that it's sometimes hard not to do that. And I think that's we shouldn't sort of criticize people that are willing to do that, But I mean, I think what we see, the way people portray this carnivore community, is everybody saying this is the only way you can do it, and everything else is poison. And I think that is an unfair characterization. And I think just talking to you guys, you're saying, hey, look, we're open to trying whatever. That's the key. And like I said, people are saying, what's wrong with broccoli? And you say, well, I've done it and it bugs me. So that's all I need to know, right? I mean, it doesn't mean it's not inherently a bad food, but for all people, but for me it is. And I think that's the important consideration there. Let folks know, I mean, we're coming close to just over the hour part. Where people can find you, what you guys are up to? You guys got anything planned for the carnivore community or in the next coming period of time?
Yeah. So one thing that we actually just released a few weeks ago is a book. So we wrote our first book, Organ Cyclopedia, and it's a really easy, practical guide to eating nose to tail. And this is for someone who may be interested in this way of eating but doesn't know where to start. We also talk about like a mental shift that's kind of required, going from the standard American diet where you're heavy on carbs and you don't see these off parts. It's kind of a hard shift into a kind of more nose to tail approach. So we have a book called Organ Cyclopedia.
Is where you can find us. We're on YouTube every single day. So we vlog every single day. Instagram at strong.sistas, and then our website is www.armstrongsisters.com. We have a few resources coming out soon. We're coming up with a cookbook that'll be out probably early summer 2020. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in getting, you know, creative with your food. And then in the future, a year from now, we will have started our own farm. So we're very passionate about farming, and we'll have our own herd of cattle soon and hopefully supply to our community. So that's what we're working after.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful. I want to ask a little bit the Organicyclopedia. So what's like your favorite kind of recipe or, you know, thing that you found about that people may not know about? I mean, I know liver, everybody hears about liver mostly, a little bit about kidney, but how do you like to prepare it? I mean, do you guys make your own sausage and stuff like that? What's the story with that?
Yeah, we actually made, so Sausage Saturday. We make our own sausage every couple of Saturdays. But in the book, we talk about like over 20 different off parts. And so it's not just organs, it's some of the off parts. And one of my favorite off parts is pig feet, pig trotters. Pig trotters have like this unique blend of skin, muscle, and fat. And our favorite way to prepare that is definitely just like boiling for a few hours and then crisping it up to get like a slightly crispy shell.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But as a whole, like in our cookbook, we basically recreated almost every single food item you could think of in a 100% animal-based way. So like
ice cream, tapioca pudding,
barbecue sauce, so
tacos.
Like, we just tried to eliminate every single possible excuse somebody could have saying like, oh, I need that food item. You can probably make it animal-based. So that has been our little project the last year.
But our favorite off part, pig feet.
Oh yeah, pig feet, non-negotiable.
How do you make do you make an ice cream? Is it dairy based ice cream, or do you use I mean, I know I've heard of like Eskimo ice cream where they use like animal fat, you know. Have you made a
Yeah, they use blubber, ice, and fruit, I think.
Local berries.
It's an Eskimo ice cream. The one we made most recently is it's just
raw cream and raw egg yolks.
It's very easy.
We have it on our YouTube channel. Very easy to do, and it is honestly very tasty.
I haven't made the Eskimo ice cream yet, but I'm intrigued.
I want to try.
Yeah, I mean, I used to make those you know, heavy cream egg. When I was doing keto, I do that all the time. You know, throw a little bit of seasoning in there, or, you know, a little vanilla, a little honey, or something like that, and that works pretty well. My kids like it, you know, but I'm just wondering. I'm intrigued by this Eskimo. If you can take tallow or some other rendered, you know, kind of fat, sweeten it somehow, and you know, maybe put some ice in there and mix it up. And I wonder how that would go. I mean, because I mean, you know, obviously if the fat is neutral tasting, if it's fairly neutral tasting, and then you put sweetener in there and you put the you know, ice. Experiment and see and get back with me. I want to.
Yeah. So a dairy-free carnivore ice cream.
Yeah, that would be a pretty interesting. That might be a big seller.
We're up for the challenge. Let's go.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, happy Sunday. You guys stay safe. You guys stay strong, which your namesakes, and it's wonderful. You guys are great representatives for the carnivore community. I'm glad I got to chat with you, and hopefully get to meet you guys in person someday once the coronavirus hysteria has died down and we've all kind of gotten our herd immunity and that type of stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you letting us come on here.
Yeah, we had a great time.
No problem. Yeah, no, the pleasure is all mine, and I'm sure the folks that are listening in. So we'll record this. We'll throw it up on YouTube in a couple days, and like I said, feel free to stop by anytime. You know, like I said, this is a rapidly growing community, and we are all here to support each other. So thank you so much, guys. I'm going to end the meeting, guys, and I'll be back again tomorrow for the normally scheduled one. And you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys. Take care.